With us now, someone who knows a lot about urban unrest, former NYPD Chief Wilbur Chapman. Good to see you, Chief. Appreciate it. Has policing changed for the better in the past 5 years?
Policing doesn't change. Policing reinvents itself because of political reasons based upon major incidents. But the basis for policing is to protect the citizens in the geographical area of their responsibility. That does not change. What does change are the elected officials who determine what police policy will be and how much policing goes into particular areas and what those policies are. Policing is not a civil right. Policing is an honor, and we have a difficult task in providing services in a fragmented and complex society. And it is more complicated by political leaders who decide what type of policing happens in their areas. Policing.
You said something at the very beginning I want to get back to. You said to protect the citizens, right?
Yeah.
And at least when I was in Chicago, lived and worked there, and I think to a certain extent here in Washington, D.C. as well, the people that Black Lives Matter was supposed to protect, which was Black lives, law-abiding Black citizens in a lot of neighborhoods have been left less protected because of the results of BLM.
Well, BLM is not responsible for providing a safe environment for any citizens, Black or otherwise. The police are responsible for that. And the police go out on a daily basis and sometimes have to pay the ultimate price by losing their lives in protecting citizens. Now, no matter where you are, whether it's urban or rural, people want the same thing. They want to be safe in their environment. Whatever activist groups may be present.
But you think people are safer in their environment 5 years later?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. Policing has become more technologically advanced. There are concerns about the interactions of police in the community in terms of special programs. There's also a need to ensure that we're hiring the absolute best to go out and do police work and not lower standards and allow people in based upon some unnecessary quota or a need just to fill various precincts.
So major cities report declines in homicides. These are this year. And I would submit that these numbers are down significantly because we had an arc, right? That after BLM, after the summer of 2020, homicide rates skyrocketed. Places like Chicago, like Washington, D.C., a number of these cities. And now the pendulum is swinging back. The police, by politicians, are allowed to once again do their jobs. And the idea of defund the police, don't prosecute anybody, as was tried in a number of cities, my hometown of St. Louis, have proved folly.
Well, defunding the police was not only an idiotic idea, it's a dangerous idea, because the police are the entity that are left in communities where there's a high incidence of crime when all of the other elements of government, agencies of government, have failed and moved along. When there aren't social services provided in a particular community, who's called in? The police. When people are sick and injured, who's called in? The police. The police have awesome responsibility and are often used as scapegoats when other entities in society fail. And that's something that you can lay right at the doorstep of the elected officials. If they're not going to have the intestinal fortitude to make sure that policing is done professionally and with respect, then they must take responsibility. You cannot scapegoat the police for the failures of elected officials.
I'm going to give you the last 15 seconds to answer this. Your sons would be too old to go into policing right now to make that decision. If you had it, would you tell a grandson right now to go into policing?
My daughter was in policing. Unfortunately, she had to retire early due to a line of duty injury. But I would tell you right now, I can find nothing better to make a contribution to the society than being a police officer. It's a tough job, and it's really important. If we're going to keep a free society, we have good police officers.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.